So hello Internet, this is the IPython and Jupyter Dev meeting for February 23rd, 2016. We already have 11 people in the room, so let's go. This week was not really eventful for me. I'm the first on the list. One thing I did is close all of JSON PR about traitlets 4.1. They were just cluttering the list, and I want to get a decision out of whether or not we update all our repo and stick to the new API, or if we postpone that. And when it's done, each of us could take one repository and update instead of having JSON to rebase 20 different PR, which are extremely painful. So I am personally a +1 on moving forward. So if you can just vote on the hackpad or on the one issue, we can decide that. I've been also still working on Pigments refactor for our themes for IPython, trying to do a much smaller chunk. It conflicted a bit with Thomas' work on using prompt toolkit. Thomas' PR has been merged. It's awesome. We have a nice IPython interface. Still some bugs to flush out, but we'll have something pretty great for 5.0. Some really cool improvements for the terminal IPython. I'm also working on decreasing the number of open PRs. It's pretty difficult when you come to the different repository to figure out what's happening. So I'm trying to lower that to less than a page of PR per repository. And otherwise, I've started monitoring interns here at UC Berkeley. So we will have 2 to 4 people that will be submitting PRs to the various repository, and we already got a PR in that prevents the notebook from starting if it's under root, if it's root user that starts the notebook, unless you pass the -- allow root flag, which should hopefully avoid some people to mistakenly run the notebook, which as a root, which can be insecure. And that's about it for me. I see that people are starting to reply to my first question on the hackpad. So it's great, we're moving forward. And next person is Carol, who is missing, and Anna is missing too. So Min, you're next.
Well, I think I saw Anna connect.
I did actually. I'm here, guys. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep.
So I'm looking at the hackpad. It seems like a chunk of my notes maybe got replaced or moved. I'm not seeing everything that I had put in there yesterday. But at any rate, I'll go back and edit that later. Updates to share. Hold on a second, just getting myself situated here. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Okay, so for the dev meeting, we are confirmed, obviously, March 28 to April 1 at Berkeley. And the agenda, we have a shell of an agenda going. So if you have an idea of topics that you want to discuss, feel free to go into, I believe that's in GitHub, right? Not in Hackpad.
I think it is in Hackpad. I think I saw it.
I'll include a link. Oh, there we go. Matthias says he'll put a link in there for me. Awesome. Thank you. And you should have all received an email about Jupyter Days Boston. That's also confirmed. That's being hosted by Andrew Odawan and Christopher Erdman. It's scheduled for March 17th through the 18th. If you can think of any contacts in the Boston area who might be interested in participating at the event or attending or speaking, please feel free to share that information with them. There is a blog post that is live and also an Eventbrite for tickets. It's a 2-day event and the early bird tickets are $25. I believe the sales of the early bird tickets conclude at the end of this week, and then starting next week they'll be $35. So it's a reasonably priced event for 2 days of activities, and it's being hosted at Harvard, so it should be a great event. The code of conduct has been put in GitHub. That's specifically the code of conduct that we're planning to use for events. And coming next, we'll work on a version for the online communities. So Carol's helped me post that into GitHub, and we'll work on making an iteration for the online communities in the coming weeks. I just saw your note, Jason, about you and Sylvan possibly interested in going. That would be great. I assume you have Andrew and Chris's contact information, but if you don't, reach out to me and let me know if you need me to connect you. So we're also working on, I don't know if someone's going to say something, feel free to interrupt me or ask questions. We're also working on the newsletter. We had an initial meeting between Brian, Matthias, Katie White, one of our interns at Cal Poly. We're working to initially create a newsletter that we would publish every 2 weeks, depending on how that goes, possibly on a weekly basis. So we're working through the logistics of how to send that out, how to allow people to subscribe to that, unsubscribe to that, etc. So if you have ideas on stories that we can feature or something that you would want to get out to the community, just let me know, and we can would really appreciate your ideas of what would be interesting to the community as I'm kind of learning about who participates and our members and their interests, and also about the project. So any ideas that you guys can send my way would be fantastic. So last week we went through the process of interviewing for internship positions at Cal Poly. We have 2 positions that we're recruiting for, software engineer and UX designers. We are in the process of sending out offer letters, and hopefully we'll get some confirmations for a great batch of students. They'll possibly start in the spring quarter part-time, and then summer will be 40 hours full-time. John and Carol will be mentoring them, so really excited to see kind of where that goes. Also posted a LinkedIn page for Project Jupyter, and that's about it for me.
Thanks. Especially thanks for all the work on the code of conduct stuff.
Yeah, sure. I think I think we developed it to a place that's pretty good, but I'm sure we'll continue changing it and updating it and making it better as we go along and get feedback. Waiting to hear feedback from Safia to see if there were any comments from the organizers or volunteers on the enforcement section or from the community on any of the language. But yeah, we'll keep making that better.
Thanks. I think I'm next. John's webpack pull request on the notebook for kind of switching over to webpack for the build chain stuff seems ready to go to me. So unless there are objections, I'd be happy to merge that one sooner rather than later to avoid further conflict things. As for my own work, I've been working on getting Jupyter Hub running with single user servers on subdomains, which has various challenges and benefits that I won't bore people with. Last night and this morning, I also put together a notebook extension that adds a scratch pad, basically adds a little cell that you can pop up and close, kind of like a terminal visor, that runs against your kernel on the notebook, but doesn't actually add content to the document itself. So you can use it for kind of poking around and fiddling and not adding a bunch of stuff to your notebook that you end up wanting to delete after the fact. And that was just prompted by a tweet someone sent last night saying they wanted something, and I said it should be easy, and so I made it to show that it is in fact the case. Next week I will be in Trondheim at NTNU talking about Jupyter and Open Dreamkit in education. And then I think we are ready for minor releases of many things. Jupyter and client and IPython kernel, I think, are all either ready or basically ready for release. So I think we can put all of those, maybe open an issue to see if there's anything that people want to make sure to get in before release. But I think we can probably cut most or all of those this week. Yeah.
Quick question, Min, what was the basic idea behind your extension? I mean, I know I saw the GIF that you posted.
Yeah,
what was the basic idea about how you did it?
Basically, when you're doing your poking around stuff, you mean how does it work?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so we have the principle of the hierarchy of dependencies. If you can use the kernel without anything, you can use a cell without a notebook. Basically, I just instantiate a cell somewhere else on the page and then get a handle in the notebook's kernel, and that's it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Roughly all of the work is the CSS for getting it to be on the page without messing everything up. That was almost all of the work to make that happen.
Cool.
I think I'm next on behalf of Gino too, unless he popped in. So, man, I'm already running the commands to install your extension because that's like a dream come true to have that scratch pad. We've talked about that forever, so thanks. Past couple days, just been cleaning up some of the readmes across the dashboards project. Some screenshots there now, tweeted about that just to start to try to tie the various repos together about arranging dashboards, bundling dashboards for deployment, and actually running them in the dashboard server that we have that we're working on now. Still need to put out some kind of demo and so on. Another news, plowing through the UX survey data, I want to bring that rolled up to the dev meeting, at least a perspective on it. I'm sure there's other people diving into it too, but since we're the ones that put the survey out, I think it's prudent that we come with some kind of analysis of it. So just plowing through it, we'll have something soon. Gino's actually working on an IR kernel project to implement the COM support so that the declarative widgets can actually work with R as well. So it's yet another language where we show, the declarative widgets approach is mostly language agnostic, again, assuming the COM layer's there. So he's working on that. And it's sort of an operational question. I don't know if it needs to be answered now. Maybe someone could do it in the hackpad. But on the dev meeting agenda, I've been dumping topics at the very bottom of the page that I'd like to get somewhere in the schedule, but I really don't care what day they're on or that kind of thing. I just want to make sure that they're not missed there, or if that's what I should be doing or not. Just let me know, somebody.
No, I think that's good, and I think one of the things that'll happen is that probably on Monday we will have to spend a little bit of time once we have people in the room, and we can basically fine tune who wants to work on what. There will be a little bit of shuffling around of the breakout topics because we simply have too much material for everyone to be present all the time. So I think we'll want to make some division, but I think it's a lot easier to kind of probe the temperature of the room, see who's most interested in what, and then try to basically draw a board of people versus topics so that we can at least get coverage, as much coverage of these as possible. So I think it's fine. I'm sure that we'll have to move around quite a bit of that schedule on Monday.
Okay.
But making sure that they're recorded in the agenda, that really is the most important part, so that we don't forget.
Okay, cool. That's it for me. Cool. So Kyle, I think you're up.
Only Jupyter thing I'm working on right now is I'm playing with TempNB and overlay networks within Swarm, as well as figuring out if there's a good way for us to do auto configuration of a network, so that you get like a lockdown network that doesn't have external access within the user notebook containers. That's about it.
Okay, so Darian's actually not going to be in today, so I'm going to give his update for him and then just follow it up directly with mine. Zadarian was working with the team, helping us get the Jupyter Lab plugin demo application to a nice state. Added a very, very simple help plugin, which adds some commands for opening various help pages in the sidebar. You basically rendering those help pages as an iframe. So that's a nice example of how to very easily extend the environment and write an extension for Jupyter Lab. So he did that. So added some other features like sending focus request messages when like when you click on a tab and your tab becomes visible, or you open a sidebar, those sorts of things, so that the widget can react to the user input action and put focus in the appropriate place, rather than us trying to come up with some heavy-handed uniform focus management API. We're just like, hey, the user has some intent. You probably want to focus yourself, and the author of the widget can react to that message as they want. I also spent some time tracking down what turned out not to be a bug, but is a gotcha with our system for managing keyboard shortcuts and selectors. So we were running into situations where we wanted a global keyboard shortcut. So we're using the star selector so that it matched anything. And then we were curious why some of our other more specific selectors weren't firing. Then it was because the star selector was matching deeper in the DOM hierarchy than the more specific selectors that only matched on the document body. So there's a link there in the hackpad about the write-up for that and the gotcha and how to deal with it and make sure you don't run across it. Myself, I spent most of last week doing code reviews and working on the styling for Jupyter Lab, bringing it in line with the design documents that Cameron has put together. And now I'm spending my time working on reducing the number of Phosphor repos, but not reducing the flexibility of your bundler to only bundle what parts of Phosphor you're using. I counted the other day, and we're now at something around 25 repos in active use, which is just insanity, and it's too much for us to manage. So we're going to try to reduce that number to about 3. And again, the trade-off is, when you npm install something, we're going to use up some disk space. But if you're bundling it for the browser, your bundler will still only pick up what you're using. So your end application isn't going to carry the weight, but we're going to take some of your hard drive space. But again, it's not all that much. A fully bundled Jupyter Lab right now with all of the code for everything that we're doing clocks in at around 50,000 lines of JavaScript. So it's not that much in the grand scheme of things.
I have to say, Chris, I'm glad to hear this, because the repo explosion, I think, creates really a lot of unnecessary complexity. I'm not saying that we should have one repo for everything in Jupyter, but it really kind of a repo per line of code becomes unmanageable.
Yeah, and it really is a balancing act and trying to figure out where we decide what chunk of functionality belongs in one repo versus what belongs in another. And so that just, that takes some time to sit down and think about it and try to divide things up appropriately. So we're still working on that. That's gonna take a bit of time to do and to do right. But once again, it's kind of one of those things, like we'll figure out the pattern, and once we figure out the pattern and how to work with it, then we can just go from there. I guess Steve is up next.
Yep. All right. So last week, polishing up the demo, like Chris said, working on styling, refactoring, styling the notebook, getting that more like the existing application. The next steps forward will be actually making it have the same semantic behaviors as the existing notebook, and adding the toolbar that Cameron spec'd out at the top for the interaction on that widget. Also, talked to Jason, and we decided to absorb some of the repos in Jupyter, specifically file browser, document manager, terminal, and DOM utils are now slurped up into JS UI. So along the same idea of reducing the amount of small repos that we have to group them where they make sense. The JS notebook will still be a separate thing that includes notebook cells, input area and output area. But the rest of the UI components will be in their own, together in one repo. I think I had one more thing. Yes, I had announcement to the mailing list about the file handling semantics, and Min already, thank you, replied to that. If anyone else has any comments, I appreciate that as I go forward in designing those semantics of how you create and interact with these file objects in the Jupyter Lab. That's it.
Okay, I think it's me next. So last week I was working on non-Jupyter items. This week, following a conversation we had yesterday with Jason and John and the rest of the Phosphor team and Sylvan, we're going to start working on IPyWidgets. So I've started taking out jQuery and Bootstrap from IPyWidgets and cleaning up for integrating properly in the new Jupyter Lab. That's basically what I'm working on for the next few days. That's it for me.
Cool. Yeah, I worked last week with Carol to conduct intern interviews. That was super fun. We had a bunch of great people turn out for that. Big thanks to both Carol and Anna for making that process extremely easy. It was way easier than last year when I did it with Brian. I reviewed the webpack PR with both Brian and Carol. They seemed really excited about it. I got Brian on board. I'm very enthusiastic about it being merged today or sometime this week, so I'm stoked to see what happens with that. I talked to our friends, like Dave mentioned, I talked to him and our friends at Continuum and Bloomberg about getting IPyWidgets to work in Jupyter Lab. And I think we have a very clear path forward. So it's just a matter of seeing that actually happen. And then I've been making a lot of small fixes in IPyWidgets. Sylvan's blocker PR for fixing the first state bug was merged. And so that means that we are extremely close to being able to release. I'm just waiting on a couple small things. But I'm not sure, actually, if we do want to release right away, because IPyWidgets is actually dependent on Notebook Master. There's some new code in Notebook that knows how to load the small split version of IPyWidgets. And so it's unclear to me if it's better to wait for the new notebook to be released or to release IPyWidgets and just fix the version that the Jupyter meta package depends on of IPyWidgets. The downside to that is if users install Notebook from pip just standalone instead of installing the Jupyter meta package and then go to install IPyWidgets, it will not work. So yeah, I would love input if you guys want to just comment in the hackpad, or if anybody has anything to say now, that would be great.
Just a general question. How close are we to a notebook release?
2.
I'm not sure about that. I know that there's Brian's NB extension stuff that we want to get merged, and if we are merging the webpack stuff, we probably should not release like immediately after that. So it's definitely like
we forked the 4.x branch a while ago, so we wouldn't backport the webpack stuff.
Oh, true. But we would backport the widget stuff.
It's mainly the NB extension installation is the only thing in between us and 4.2 really. So it's just how long that takes.
Okay, yeah, I've been talking about that on the side channel with Brian. So
what prevents us from doing a 4.2 and a 4.3 with the NB extension?
If there's a strong reason to do 4.2 before that, we can decide to do that and ship it. That's totally fine.
I think we'd really like to move ahead with the IPyWidgets. We're starting to use the IPyWidgets in the Jupyter Lab, and so having an officially released IPyWidgets that has the results of the small split, I think would help us move forward.
Okay, let's try to figure out exactly what we need to do for that in terms of a minor notebook release and a widgets release in a separate conversation.
Yeah, totally.
I think we can figure that out.
Totally. So yeah, that's it for me. Sylvan, I think you're up next.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, as you mentioned earlier, push the first state fix in IPyWidgets. Also, I'm working this afternoon on a couple of minor issues that are must be fixed before we release. And yeah, was also part of that meeting about the roadmap for IPyWidgets in Jupyter Lab. That's it. Jess, you're next, I think.
I think she could always
won't make it. So Nick, are you there?
Hello, sorry about that. So been doing some more work on ME Presents, got some good feedback thus far from some folks in the community. Really big part of that was getting to participate for some random reason in Jupyter Day Chicago. Safia and everybody there did a fantastic job. It was a really great event. It was a really beautiful day. I imagine it was very hard for the Chicagoans to come out on such a beautiful day and talk Jupyter all day, but really good turnout there. Got a lot of feedback from a bunch of folk that are interested in just kind of all parts of the notebook, right? And the stack and deploying it and all those things. So I was certainly at a loss for some of the stuff, but I pointed them in different repos directions. So hopefully one should work out. Been doing some more thinking about the visual diff work, a data model for kind of the long game of talking about the difference of a notebook over many points in time, as well as many points in dissemination. Similarity, difference. There's a lot of different angles to it that are very exciting, but a lot of good stuff to look at. The GitHub unified merge view and some other things. A lot of good things to queue off of. Got some help from Jupyter Day. I guess I should move that up there. Herding Bats, gentleman at O'Reilly, and
quick question.
Yep.
Have you talked much with Martin Alnes at Simula about this stuff? It seems like you have a lot of really good ideas and have been looking at some of these questions. And I know Martin is putting time into it as well.
So Martin, I mean, I haven't been able to assist a lot in the work that Martin is doing right now. He's still, pretty heavy in the algorithmic and API design stage. And it's a fiddly business building diff stuff. So I really want to see, I'm positing what could we do if we had his environment, right? And doing it from a visual fashion that's not really meant so much for merge per se, but more for the narrative of the development of a notebook over time. So I think there's definitely two specific meanings to the work that he's doing, which is more like a developer kind of tool, and the work that I'm doing that's more of a curatorial archival kind of view. But yeah, we're sharing stuff back and forth. Yeah, there's been some contact.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Excited about some of the talk about rich output that Gino started up, or somebody started up, but Gino's been kind of behind. And just a lot of exciting talk there about draft. Kyle's little draft demo was awesome. I would love to see Kotek live rendering sub-second re-rendering of a whole notebook, because that's just what Kotek can do. So there's, I think, a big story long term of not only going after PowerPoint, as I'm trying to do, but also let's go after Word and Lix and those guys. And then I'm going to look over the Webpack PR because it's super exciting. That is all. Thanks. And next person is Thomas.
Hello. So the prompt toolkit work landed in IPython, and as of a few minutes ago, the equivalent PR for Jupyter Console also landed. So on the plus side, terminal stuff just got quite a lot nicer. On the downside, stuff probably will break because it's a fairly big change. Apologies if you run into something broken. That's kind of why we merged it into master, so that we can detect those things. So if you run into something, file a bug, let us know. Hopefully it will be fixed soon. I think that's all I had to say about Prompt Toolkit. And then I've been working on the paper for LPub, the Electronic Publishing Conference in Germany. Ironically, for an electronic publishing conference, they give me Word and LaTeX templates.
So Thomas, speaking of breakage, as you were speaking, I did a git pull on the repo, and I tried to run IPython at the terminal, and now I get a trace back on start. It won't even start because I'm missing Prompt Toolkit, and it's not conda installable. So this is a flag. I just want to flag it that it will be. We basically have a new dependency in the path, and so for the Continuum folks listening, it's just worth flagging it. So eventually it'll be good to have the dependencies available over conda. I mean, I'm just going to install it manually, obviously, but I just noticed that. And so for anyone on a conda stack, now it won't run. You can't run off master.
Yeah, there are. I mean, it's a pure Python package, so you can easily pip install it, and there are packages on anaconda.org already. There's just Continuum haven't made it, part of the official channel yet, but it should be trivial for them to do so before we release.
Yeah, I was just mentioning
it has been merged less than 24 hours ago. So yesterday.
I guess it's my turn. Yeah, 12 of those hours, most people in the United States have been asleep or home or whatever. So
it was not a complaint. It was not a complaint. I was just
right. No. I was just pointing out.
Yeah, absolutely. And it runs fine, and syntax highlighting as you type. Awesome. I just saw it.
You know that in 12 hours you can at least publish 6 JavaScript frameworks, right?
Yes.
Can you get them packaged? That's the question.
In 5 different packaging systems, yes. So I worked with Chris, Steve, Darian, and Dave on the lab demo and participated in the conversation. I owe an email to the list with some proposals that we have for doing widgets. Essentially, we'd like to propose a way to do widgets that are interspersed with output areas. So we can have an output and a widget, an output and a widget, and then also make it easy to have outputs framed in a widget so that it's still easy to do an animation by calling clear output, say, basically have a widget that'll capture output. So I will send an email to the list with a proposal for that and get comments, and then we'll all start working on it. I think, Fernando, you're next.
Hold on, I was muted. Sorry, I was muted. So more hiring, trying to wrap up the postdoc process. We've had, last I counted, 45 applicants for the project manager position, but there could be a few more. I'm trying to get HR to close the job ad, so that, because otherwise every day we look, there's a few more. So we're working on that. Matthias has been an incredible help in the process, and so I want to flag that out, because if it wasn't for Matthias, this would not be happening. I spent a few days at EdFu, which is this on-conference organized by O'Reilly, Google, and the Department of Education. This is mostly people who work in education, all the way from elementary school to higher ed, university. Presented Jupyter to that community. There was lots of interest, feedback. At the conference, I ended up working a little bit with one of the devs of the MicroPython project, specifically the person who's working on the BBC Microbit, which is a teeny device that is going to be sent out by the BBC to all the children in the UK in, I think, about a month. All the children on what they call Year 7 in the UK curriculum, which my understanding is are kids around 11, 12 years of age. And so
the first year of high school.
Excuse me?
So yeah, about 11, 12.
Okay. And so worked with him a little bit on helping him to get an IPython kernel working for the microbit that controls that device. And we brainstormed a lot and ended up hacking a bit. And Carol and Thomas are already in the loop. It turns out that Carol already knew him and Thomas had already contacted him. So with a bit of luck, those devices will have IPython support. During the feedback sessions, Greg Wilson pointed out a couple of interesting ideas, and in particular for education, this report that I linked there called The Science of Learning, which is a very short report from deans from many universities in the US, I think, got together and did kind of a research on how people learn and made some recommendations. And so it could be a set of guidelines that we could think of as sort of evidence-based, well-tested guidelines for features and principles of teaching that we could imagine taking into account as we develop new features for Jupyter, specifically when applied to educational contexts. A little bit more discussions with folks from the LIGO collaboration. I happened to be lucky that one of the main people in the collaboration and who was one of the authors of the notebook that they put in the Open Science Center, gave a talk here at LBL last Friday. And so I met with him briefly and had a chance to talk about it. He was very happy to have Jupyter as part of their analysis pipeline. And as a physicist who saw LIGO come online 20 years ago and thought that it was a crazy and impossible dream, it was a very, very exciting day, I have to say. And so I actually wanted to thank everyone here who has made this project possible, because this talk was literally the room was overflowing. The Q&A had to be cut off after 45 minutes. And every physicist at LBL was there kind of shivering with electricity. It was one of the probably the most exciting science seminar that I've ever seen in my life. And every plot he had up on the screen was made with Matplotlib and NumPy, and they used the stack throughout. So as an important moment in science, it was really pretty impressive. And thinking that when I started IPython in 2001, I was trying to get rid of IDL, which was probably what these people would have used otherwise, because IDL is what astronomers and astrophysicists used to use up until now. I would say Friday was the victory we've been working on for 15 years. So I want to thank all of you. Otherwise, preparing for SciSoft days at UT Austin. I'm flying there tomorrow. I'm going to be speaking there about the project and meeting kind of other scientific computing developers from Austin. And finally, working a little bit on helping get more speakers for Jupyter Days Boston. I wanted to remind all of you about Jupyter Days Boston. Tell your friends, tell your colleagues. If you want to speak there, please think of going if it's easy for you to go. And finally, we have a toy coming to Berkeley. We have a Fiona device coming to Berkeley in the next few weeks. Thanks again to Matthias for helping also with the logistics. A Fiona is basically a high-end 28-core machine with a Tesla K80 GPU, which is basically the very highest end GPU that NVIDIA makes. Lots of SSD and very, very large network capacity to be plugged into the research backbone of the west coast of the US on dual 40 gigabit with dual 40 gigabit connections. And it'll be running Jupyter Hub. This is something that the UCSD team led by Larry Smarr, who's the original founder of NCSA, where Netscape was invented, is effectively, they put this project together. They have assembled these machines. It's part of an NSF-funded effort to link all of the west coast of the U.S. Research universities and the national labs, and they're going to they've installed Jupyter Hub on one of them, and it's going to arrive to the Berkeley campus as a research and development machine. So if any of you has ideas on high-performance computing, GPU work, access to large data sets, we will have this machine available for research and development. And so I wanted you all to know that it'll be here in a few weeks, and we can use it, and we should test it. We should hit it hard. We should see what use cases we can explore with as the development of the project, or scientific collaborators that any of you may have. So if that's the case, let us know, and we can work on the logistics for access. And that's it for me.
That is therefore it for the meeting, I think.
Yes.
Does anyone else have anything that we may have missed? Any other comments that may have occurred while the meeting was ongoing? Okay. Otherwise, I think we're done, and we don't need to make these any longer than they have to be. I think today Matthias was the one recording. I had another meeting and I was a few minutes late, so I can't control the recording. But bye, everyone.
Bye, Jeanette.